morning, everybody. Thank you all for coming out here today. It's such a gorgeous day out by the beach, and I'm glad you took time out of your day to spend it with us. I know you got deals to do and homes to sell and clients to talk to, so we always appreciate you taking the time out to be here. My name is Taylor Thompson. I'm your Government Affairs Director here with the association. And before I kick it over to Daina Moore, who is going to be our moderator for today, I do want to say we might see a little change to our panelists here. Unfortunately, the District Attorney, Summer Steffen, couldn't make it today. 2 people on her staff did contract COVID, and she did get exposed. So unfortunately, for her safety and yours, she decided not to make it. But she's still out crime fighting from home, and she wanted to send her love and all of her appreciation to each and every one of you here today. So before I kick it over I just want to say that Daina Moore, our moderator for today, has been in this industry since I was 2 years old. That's very horrible. She said I could say it. She said I could say it. It's true. I got that approved.
Daina, don't slap him.
But she has served in so many leadership roles, and since we brought her on in the association, she has done such a wonderful job. You might see her at your broker's office or fixing your problems. And I always just take my hat off to Daina. I've actually learned so much from you about being on video. You make me look terrible. And then also, right before I kick it over, I do want to recognize one other person who has shown so much leadership in the association and has done such a great job on staff, and that is Martha Peralta, our membership director. She's the one who makes everything happen. So thank you so much, Martha. It's been my pleasure to work with you my last 4 years here, so thank you for everything. So I'm going to go ahead and kick it over to Daina and get this party started. Thank you so much.
Good morning. Yes, it's true, 32 years I've been in the business. I know most of you, and for those that I don't, it's very, very nice to meet you. My name is Daina Moore. Many of you know me from Sandapore over the last 20 years, and now my more recent role the last year as the Director of Broker Relations at North San Diego County. So I'm so pleased to be here and to moderate this panel. So I'm going to go ahead and kick it off. Our panelists today are Rebecca Jones, the Mayor of the City of San Marcos, Dr. Priya Patel, City Councilwoman for the City of Carlsbad, and our very own 2022 North San Diego County Realtors President, Lisa Fore. All right, we'll start with question number 1 to all the participants, and we'll go this way to that way, and then we'll go back the other way. What is your background, and what started your journey to where you are today?
Awesome. Well, great to be here. Welcome to my city, Carlsbad, everyone. I'm so glad it's beautiful. So, Priya Bhat-Patel, City Council member here in the city of Carlsbad. I grew up here. So I had the privilege of going to Aviar Oaks, if you're familiar with Carlsbad, and then Carlsbad High School. Ended up at UCSD. I thought I was going to be a physician, so I was going that route. Ended up switching gears when I learned about the United States healthcare system and ended up wanting to go into some sort of health policy. So I have my master's and doctorate in public health, and had done a lot in the city where I'd had the opportunity to volunteer as a library volunteer, a community emergency response team, and then felt like I wanted to do more to give back and provide a different perspective, a young perspective, a working woman's perspective, and so decided to run for city council and ended up winning, which was honestly, it's been an honor of a lifetime to serve the city I grew up in. I do have a 13-month-old, so I'm raising my son with my family here in Carlsbad, and hopefully he'll have the same privileges I did, but honestly, it was really wanting to do more to serve in a different capacity in the city and just do what I could to provide that perspective. And honestly, I can say the policy, actually doing public policy as a public health professional has been really cool. Being able to provide that perspective, and I think, I'm sure you all know, like when you walk into a room, you're able to provide a different perspective as well on certain things and certain issues. So just being able to do that has been, I think, really exciting because we've come up with really innovative solutions here in the city, and I think have been leaders in a lot of different ways. So That's why I'm here today, and looking forward to serving another 4 years if elected in November. And that's a little bit about me. I'm sure we'll dive into it more a bit later.
So I am Rebecca Jones, the mayor of San Marcos. I have been blessed to live in San Diego County since I was 4 months old. I grew up in Ramona and El Cajon mostly, and then I moved to San Marcos in 1987. Many of you may not know, my mom is a real estate agent, and I did grow up farming with her and calling her customers and doing all of that fun stuff, so I know a lot what you were going through every day and what your day honestly looks like, and it's pretty much like mine. You never know what you're going to get. And so I have been blessed to serve the city of San Marcos for 3 terms as a council member. I was elected, I actually was first appointed in 2007, and then I was elected in 2008, 12, and 16 as a council member, and then in 2018, I was elected as the first woman to ever serve as mayor in San Marcos. I have to tell you, I look around San Marcos and I truly have to pinch myself because I look at all of the things that we've done and how far we've come. And it really has changed so significantly in what I think is a better way. And we just have a lot of economic development happening. And I do want to say that my economic development director is here today, Tess Sangster. Let's give her a hand. You know, when we hired Tess, we really started looking at what we could do differently. And my background, as I had mentioned, I worked at Coldwell Banker as, when I was about 20, as a branch secretary, but I also got my real estate license, and I sold new homes mostly. I did originate loans, I have worked in escrow, so I really know what you're going through. And then my ex and I owned a furniture sales and marketing business that we built. We started that in 1997, and we grew that to $100 million in sales a year, so it's a pretty big company. Many of our customers still have contracts today. Best Buy, Costco, Walmart, you might know those retailers. Anyway, and so I think that really has helped me serve as mayor because I understand what our businesses are going through, and then also the real estate part of it, which is a really important part of my job as far as land use goes. So anyway, thank you so much for being here today, and I'm looking forward to answering all of your questions at the end. Thank you.
I feel like the oddball out, not a public policy. I'm Lisa Fore. If you're, Lisa, you're current president for NSDCR. How I got here, I've grown up in Carlsbad, or North County actually, for most of my life since I was 2. Until my mom decided to get remarried and move me to Mississippi my junior and senior year of high school, which was a really big culture shock. My grandmother got me a 2-week plane ticket back to see my friends graduate, and I came back, had my duffel bag of clothes, and after 3 days called my mom, said I wasn't getting back on the plane. So I lived with my grandmother for a year, and until I was trying to find my way, and one of my old managers in her office, she owned a brokerage here. She was a realtor herself, and she would not hire me because of bad blood with my mother who works there, but one of my old managers hired her behind my back, and so I've been in this business since 1996, and so I've done a lot of different aspects of it, from vacation rentals to property management and sales. And so I've just been blessed to have the ability for a solid 10 years or so to work with my grandmother before I took over the company. So it's a little bit about me, a little bit short background, but all I know is this business. So,
Thank you.
Yeah,
We'll go in the reverse. Okay. What have been the biggest hurdles you faced in getting here?
Well, starting in '96, I was fresh out of high school. I was 18 years old, and my grandmother at the time primarily did vacation rentals and sales, and so we did a lot of beachfront property. So with that, you deal with, this is actually a real hurdle, not to be a women's thing, but you deal with a lot of very wealthy people. And so with that, as a young girl, and you're, still in your teens, even in your early 20s, I dealt with a lot of very wealthy men who looked at you like you didn't know what you were talking about. So that was a bit of a struggle, actually. I got a kick out of it because after years of experience, people would walk in my office, and even men and women actually, and they'd ask the question, they're like, hi, can I help you? And they'd ask the question to the person sitting at the desk next to me, not even paying attention to them. They'd look right over me, and I was like, hey, right here. And I kind of got over it after a while. I was like, okay, you want them to help you? And I kind of got a crack out of it because half the time they'd have to ask me the question and give them the answer. So it was pretty satisfying. But when you're younger like that, entering a business, it's a struggle because people judge you by your age and not your experience. And so after that, though, I think the other biggest hurdle was I got to a point I knew the business. But when I took over the business, and that struggle of stepping into that role and knowing the business is a whole lot different than running a business and dealing with employees. And so I think that was probably one of my bigger hurdles at that point, was going through that transition.
Thank you.
I would say my two biggest hurdles are Mean Girls and not actually liking politics. So let me go into those a little bit. So I sometimes say things that are maybe not the most popular, but I think as women, we need to always, and we do have some men here too, but I think as women, we need to always make sure that we are building one another up, and we really do better together when we are united and appreciating the wonderful things about every woman. Every woman is beautiful. Every woman has something special about her. And I think as we respect and appreciate those things, we definitely help our gender do better. And nothing against men, of course. We love men. But it's really important to remember that. So I actually have a podcast as well. It's called She-Dio Lead-In, and it's all about exposing younger women to different careers, and I think that's important, but also making sure that we are, like I said, appreciating those things about other women. And then the P word, politics. I have never been uber political. I love to see people thriving. I love to see people doing well at whatever they're doing. And you can't do that when you're divided. You can't do that when you pick a side. Picking a side is picking a side for everyone, for me, and that is everyone to do well, to live the American dream, which is what you're selling every single day. Home ownership, and not everyone's going to own a home. That part's reality. But we definitely want people as much as possible to have that opportunity. And for me, my job shouldn't be about politics. It should be about creating opportunity, creating a space where people are having a high quality of life and really enjoying every day that they get to spend on this beautiful earth. Even though we're not in San Marcos, we are inland. We don't get to enjoy the beautiful coast every single day, but we do have great places. We have great parks and all of that. And I think those are opportunities for me to do well. But again, the politics part is really a challenge for me because I don't like to pick a side. So anyway, thank you.
And I piggyback off that, Rebecca, because I think that, when you're representing and serving a community that you truly love, you don't want to play politics. You just want to do what you can to actually get the job done and serve your community in the best ability that you can. And I think that for me, that has been a hurdle, is that, kind of being that middle ground. I am the youngest on our council, have been the youngest ever elected in the city. And so providing that perspective, so really think that, the age piece, yes, the gender piece sometimes, but I think more the age piece was something that definitely people will think you don't have experience. But what I think that's really important is, regardless of where you come from, what your lived experience might be or your walk of life might be, you bring something to the table and you bring that different perspective. And so I really appreciated what you said with regards to, everyone has that beauty within them, right? So you're bringing something that really will help, I think, to build whatever is next. And so I think definitely the politics aspect. I would say the other thing is definitely age. And then I think the other piece, I guess, with regards to hurdles, would just be being able to be yourself, because I think that's the hardest part. People will tell you to be something completely different or try to be somebody else in order to get to where you need to be. But I think for me, it's been about wanting to be myself and actually making sure that I'm doing what I can to, especially for the next generation. Like I said, I have a 13-month-old. I think it's really important for all future generations to know they can be them and thrive. And I think that's been, for me, something that's been interesting to have to navigate and just say, you know what, I'm not going to be what you want us to be or what you want me to be, and I'm going to do what I got to do to continue to serve my community. And so those would be my 3 hurdles, I would say.
Okay. Let's start with Rebecca. Did you have a mentor? And if so, what was the most important thing you learned from them?
I actually had 2 in this career. So back when I was actually an activist before I joined the city council. I had 2 current council members at that time telling me that I should run for office, and I said, why would I want to do that? I have you. And they said, well, we won't be serving forever. And so I had a man who was a Republican, a woman who was a Democrat, and both of them had such tremendous leadership skills, and I really appreciated different parts of both of them. And I really took it to heart that you could always serve your community without being political. And it wasn't political back then. This was back, in the early 2000s. And I remember I had a little baby at the time, not 18 months old, but about 1.5. Oh, I guess it was almost the same age. My daughter. And it was funny because when I was an activist, people used to say, yeah, she's walking around, she's got her baby on her little back, in a backpack. That's how they remembered me when I would show up to the city council meetings with the stroller and all of that. I think what I took away the most was probably from Priya, and that was your love of the community and your love of being thirsty for knowledge and being well rehearsed and well versed in all of the things and all of the decisions that you are going to make really is valuable. And knowing what you're talking about, knowing your subject matter, no one can ever take that from you. And she used to say that I was like Nancy Drew, which I still laugh about that. Every time I see her, we kind of have this thing where we know what that is. She goes, hello, Nancy. Hello, Priya. And that is really just being well prepared, having that thirst of knowledge, wanting to know the why and how things work. I think that has really served me very well.
Thank you. Lisa, mentor?
It's hard. I've actually had a lot of mentors along the way, and it's such a blessing when people are willing to pick up the phone to you. And I would have to say though, my very first mentor was my grandmother, and so I learned a lot from her about the business. I would say probably the 2 key components that she really taught me throughout my life was one, from a very young age, being involved and giving back. And so from a very young age, I was volunteering, whether junior counselor at the Boys and Girls Club or at the elderly facility, taking them on walks and doing arts and crafts, whatever it was. I was always encouraged, sometimes forced, to give back. And so it's just something now as an adult that it's been instilled in me. And so I'm constantly being voluntold in different directions. But I think it's really important because along the way I've met so many other people who have had an enormous impact on my life, and I continuously learn from. There's people in this room that I highly respect and that I'll turn to with questions as well. And so just those relationships are invaluable, and that is from being involved. And you can't grow, especially in a leadership role, especially if you're running a company, it's very hard. I mean, how many classes you take and everything, it's very hard to evolve as a human being if you're not surrounding yourself by people that are better than you. And so, and so being involved in that aspect is, a way that you get that. So other than that, one of the biggest things my grandma was big about was if you're not happy, you can't make anybody else happy, right? So that is about making sure that you are doing something for yourself, feeding your soul, whatever that may be. For me, it's snowboarding. So in the wintertime, I get fall, I'm like, I'm sorry, it's my weekend. Every other weekend in the wintertime, I have a small sprint of getting, snowboarding in, and that's kind of grounds me, that and camping. And so it's just taking that time, whatever it may be for you, to give back to yourself so that you can be there and be present for other people.
Thank you. Priya?
It'll sound cliche, but my parents, I would say, so they're immigrants from India, and for me it was really exciting to see so I was born in Illinois, we were talking about that earlier, moved to Carlsbad when I was 7, so been here most of my entire life. And, really just watching them immerse themselves in the community and giving back and not expecting anything in return. And I think that, to me, has driven what public service actually means, right? Is being able to do something for the community without expecting anything in return. Everyone says it's a thankless job, right? And, for me, it's actually living my purpose. So I don't necessarily view it as such, but I think it's one of those things where they continue to teach me that, when you're giving back to your own community, it's something where it's truly rewarding, and it's something that will continue to fulfill my purpose. And so I would say that they have been a prime example of that, and I know we're instilling that in my son as well, and hoping that he'll also feel that he can volunteer within the community and want to give back in some capacity as well.
If you want to continue, can you tell us, as a member of a city council, where do you see your cities, this would be for Becca and Priya, going in the next 5 years, and what impacts does housing have on your residents?
Gosh, I could talk all day about that one. I think, so if we're talking about the next 5 years, we're actually in the middle of our strategic planning with the city council, so we actually are mapping out the next 5 years, which is really exciting. And we've come up with some of of course, housing is top, number one for all of us. We're doing our growth management plan update, our general plan update right now, and we just passed our housing element. And so we're in the process of trying to figure out, what does growth for our community and city look like? And I think that as somebody who is the only renter on council, it is super important to me that we can figure out ways to diversify our housing stock so that we have the ability, especially for that missing middle, I'm raising my hand, that we have the ability to actually root ourselves in the communities that we have the ability to grow up in and thrive in and are investing ourselves in. And I want to do that for my kid also. I want him to have the same privilege, whether it's Carlsbad or anywhere else in California or outside of California. But I think it's really important that we do as much as we can to provide that. So that's definitely top of mind for our council. And then I would say the next 3 very quickly, and then I'll talk about housing in Carlsbad, would be we're focusing on economic development quite a bit. I was the lead in charge of trying to spearhead an economic development committee. We had a COVID-19 pandemic response that we had created with regards to the economic development committee to help bolster our small and medium-sized businesses. And so moving out of that, we've created a standing committee and are actually putting together an economic development strategy document, which I'm super excited about because our city apparently didn't have one. And so I'm looking forward to that actually coming forward. And then sustainability issues will be definitely top of mind for us as well. And I would say last but not least, we're just looking at ways that we can continue to, of course, preserve our beautiful coastline and ensure that we can continue to do what we can to allow for future generations to enjoy it as well. And then in terms of just, I know I addressed it a bit with regards to housing, I think one of the things that I'll look to you all for in terms of help is trying to message to folks about why housing is so important. And I've been doing that, but I think, having folks like yourselves out there and explaining to people why we're building is so important, because I think that people, once they've purchased their home and if they've been there for 20 years, they don't necessarily see the reason as to why we need more. And I just explained why we need more, right? And I know you all know that, I'm preaching to the choir. So I think just having folks out there, boots on the ground, letting folks know why, and making sure that we're reminding people that these could be their kids and their grandchildren that are coming back to reinvest in their communities.
Rebecca?
Well, we are also updating our general plan, which is something that we definitely needed to do. The last time we updated it in 2012, it hadn't been done for a couple of decades, so it was long overdue that last time. For me, as a mayor of San Marcos, a lot of the things that I like to focus on are quality of life, and then also safety of people, and then also making sure that we are being fiscally responsible. Part of that is definitely includes housing, because housing, you can't do anything, your businesses won't do well if you don't have places for people to live. And we do have our general plan, as we mentioned, but really I think one of our biggest struggles is going to be in the next 5 years of how these state mandates are going to continue to affect us as a city, because we know in San Marcos what makes our city special and what we want to see and all of that. We certainly don't want things that are happening up in Northern California affecting us here locally, because it really changes our quality of life and how we want to live. And so we really are struggling, I think, with that more than anything. I don't want any state mandate pulled out and telling us, oh, but you have to do this and you have to do that. I for one, really do struggle with that. But also, so in the next 5 years, we will be finishing our largest capital improvement project in our city's history, our creek infrastructure. Who has been in San Marcos when it's rained? And all of that beautiful San Marcos Creek that goes everywhere. So we are in the process of doing that work right now. That'll be done sometime next year. Our first bridge is coming up in the next few months that will be completed. That's at Bent Avenue. Really excited to see that happen. And if you look right there at Discovery, what's happening? Our biggest exciting thing in a while, and that is the Kaiser Permanente hospital that's going up, 206-bed facility. That is 500 high-paying jobs. For us, we have to have jobs, we have to have places for people to live. So these are all struggles that we will be continuing to work with. And if you've been in San Marcos, you know how the 78 bisects us. So transportation is also another issue for us. And now that we have the new regional transportation plan, the road user charges, the sales taxes that'll be needed, and then also the managed lane conversion on the 78, it's going to affect my city very drastically. So these are all things that we're struggling with. I certainly know that we can continue to fight and work for a good quality of life in San Marcos, but these things are going to affect us. And if it affects us in the city, it's affecting you as real estate agents, because if our quality of life slips, people don't want to move there anymore. And our market is hot. People want to move to San Marcos. They look at the city and they go, wow, look what's happening there. Our school district is doing very well, but then they just announced a bunch of layoffs, up to 100 teachers in this fall. So a lot of things are definitely stacked up in a way that could teeter either way. So I think as we continue to stay on the track that we're on, we should be able to keep everything held together and continue doing a great job and providing the good quality of life, but it certainly isn't going to be something that's easy. And then we also want to keep people safe, which we are one of the safest cities in all of the county. I think number 2. Generally, we're right around number 2 out of 18 cities plus the county, so really proud of that. But anyway, just really excited to move forward in the next 5 years and all the things that our city will be offering.
Thank you. Lisa, from the North San Diego County Realtors Board member perspective, where do you see the biggest challenges realtors face in this market?
Well, piggyback a little bit off of what they've been speaking about and housing, everybody in this industry feels it. And the middle class has just been continually squeezed out of the housing industry, and it's just getting worse. And so, and a lot of people want to say, hey, well then, they can move to a different city, we can build it elsewhere. We don't have any more capacity to build here. But when we're over 5 million houses short on a national level, you can't just build elsewhere. You've got to build in your backyard too. So, or we're going to have more difficult conversations like population control, which is not going to happen. So, but the housing need is there, and so we have to build here, right? And so I think we are so blessed as an association to have council members like the ones that are sitting up here, who have those conversations with us. That I've been blessed to, working with the Government Affairs Committee, to have lunch meetings with them, and we talk about these situations, and they're out there equally fighting. But it takes everyone here also talking about that and making people understand why we are where. I saw a study actually that had just come out that said only, which is mind-boggling to me because then I wonder how and where all these people are buying homes, but only 1/4 of the people who live here can actually afford a medium-priced home, which is just under $800,000. And it takes $144,000, $145,000 a year for them to qualify. So put that in perspective. If you have kids that are trying to grow up, trying to live here, single moms, whatever it may be, it's, not everybody's making that income. So, but other than that, as far as our, our membership goes, working with local government affairs on, and also on a state level with our state directors, we've got some in here as well, sitting in tables. That's what we do. We work on these legislative issues. And so it's really important, though, for our membership to get out there and speak about what our associations do. I know there's a lot of, some brokerages out there that don't support the associations, but we really are the only entity out there that are fighting for our clients' private property rights. And when I talk about that to people, they're shocked. And I think it's really important to continue to get that message, because the Zillows, Redfins of the world, they're not going to fight for their private property rights. They're not going to care. They're going to split them up into 4, units to a single-family home, and so all your hard work, goes out the door. And so I think it's really important that we as members talk about that, because the other part of it is our association that's fighting for our industry. And I think that's the other hurdle that we are going to be facing over the next couple of years. There's some major lawsuits that are out there right now that are challenging our industry severely, and it's questionable. They really think over the next couple of years that there is a good possibility that the way that we are compensated is going to be challenged. And they think that, potentially there's a good percentage, 15, 20%, that may not even exist in this industry in the next couple of years. So look around the room, there could be 15 to 20% of you that might not be here. So being involved in understanding that and talking about that to people so they understand the value of what we do, that we don't just open doors, and that we're out there also fighting for them, brings more value to them. I think so much about it that people think that I'm in politics, and they don't even know what I do, because I suck about talking about what I do, other than just doing this stuff. So it just, keeping that in mind and getting involved in understanding that what's going on around us is important.
So we'll now go ahead and continue about looking into the future. What is the biggest endeavor you'd like to accomplish?
Well, I'm kind of starting over. In 1996 I started this business. 2006 my grandma passed away and I took over the company. It was primarily vacation rentals and sales, and we grew an unfurnished rental department. And last year was not COVID related, but I decided to sell off a division of the company. So I sold our vacation rental department after 25 years. I'm no longer doing vacation rentals. It was just incredibly challenging, but mostly it was really hard to see how taxing it was on the employees. And so I was burnt out, and I had to look at the company and say what was dragging me down when I walked in the door every day. And that was it. So I sold off that division of the company, and we're solely now focused on the unfurnished side of the property and sales. But with that, we are now back to growing the company. We were always growing, but hyper focused on redoing all of our systems and growing. We still manage a few hundred homes, so it's not like we're small, but we it feels like we're starting over. So that is my focus over the next handful of years, and that's what I'm about.
Well, I mentioned it a little bit earlier. We definitely want to get the infrastructure project completed, the Kaiser Hospital opening, and honestly focusing on our downtown, which is the first time we've ever had a downtown in San Marcos, right there at North City. But then there's also the old Restaurant Row, which is something that is in the midst of having a new plan that will be moving forward. My hopes are definitely that it will contain an element of the iconic part of San Marcos, which is the old Restaurant Row part of it, and not just be another housing development. There's a lot of discussion out there that, there's a lot of angst. And to Priya's point, which is true, we need the housing ladder, and we do need conversations to continue happening. But we do need housing, but it's not just all about housing. It's absolutely about having the commercial and retail space to support that housing, but also creating a special quality of life to keep people off of the roads as much as possible, to keep them within the city, because let's face it, cities need your tax revenue and your customers' tax revenue. So we want to keep people as much as at home in San Marcos as possible. So that will be creating the right spaces for them. Part of that is a downtown with North City. And I don't know if y'all have heard, but the developer of North City is talking about going a little bit higher in their height limits, but creating more open, activated space for people to come and enjoy themselves within San Marcos. So even if you live outside of San Marcos, you can definitely come to San Marcos. We're absolutely have open doors for you. But we do want to create that space, and that's something special. And again, you know, back to the state mandates. That's not going to happen if the state has their way, because they want to take over all land use from local jurisdictions, and we certainly don't want it. So we do need your help. And you know, back to Lisa's point, we do need to be engaged as far as an industry, because everything that happens housing, it also is kind of affecting what happens retail, commercial-wise, but then also with our quality of life. So those things we need to definitely continue working on. But again, creating that downtown in San Marcos is a really important thing for me.
Thank you.
I would say that the biggest endeavor would be really just bringing more connectivity to our entire community. So South Carlsbad, that's where I live, and kind of where you're at. You're on the border of South and North. But basically for me, if you're from Carlsbad, you know that a lot of the people in La Costa area or Poinsettia area, a lot of them tend to either go to Encinitas to go hang out. What we need, kind of similar to Rebecca's point, is definitely having more of those commercial, retail, different types of restaurants, which I've been talking to Visit Carlsbad. We have a new CEO now, so just talking to them about how do we bring more diverse businesses to our community so that we have people that'll want to live, work, and play within the city, right? And I think as a young person, I know that I'd want to have, especially for my millennial generation that wants everything near them, right? Convenient and accessible all the time. If you look at Kensington at the Square, which is in Bressie Ranch, if you're familiar with that, that is a great model of what we need throughout our community. I think, you know, everything that has walkability, you have your bars there, you have your groceries, you know, you even have a yoga studio. So basically everything is right there at your fingertips. You have the ability to do whatever you need to do. Public transit options, you know, you can bike, walk, drive. So I think for me, it's looking at that and using that as a model for what as we start to build out the city and we have opportunities for building, looking at that as a model and saying, hey, let's look at how we can create opportunities for that. And then the one thing that I know I've been talking about with our private sector, with the tourism industry especially, is having a public trolley system from the south part of Carlsbad up to the north part. Of course, if our other coastal cities want to join in once we've done it, that would be awesome. But I do think it would allow for not only our locals, but our tourists to have the ability to take something. It's kind of similar to Laguna Beach if you've been up there, but just allowing for that. So that's been a vision of mine, is trying to get that up and running in the next few years and having something that would be more of an amenity for us to utilize for our public.
And if you'd like to continue and give us some advice, what advice would you want to give if someone is looking to run for office or step into a leadership role? And this is for the entire panel, so do you want to start?
Yeah, definitely. I think just if you have the passion, is what I tell people. If you have that inner fire in you, you can definitely run. There is no specific qualification to run for office, right? It can be anyone. I always tell people that as long as you know that you want to serve your community and you are willing to step into something that will take a lot of your time, then you can definitely do it. And I think as long as you're true to yourself, because as I said earlier, one of the biggest hurdles is people trying to push you to be somebody else. Just be who you are, and I think that's what connects with people the most, is just understand, like, people knowing that you're genuine and realizing that you're there for the sole reason is that you want to serve your community. And so I think as long as you're that person, you can run for office, and I encourage everyone to do it, right? It is definitely an exciting challenge to take on, but honestly, I think for those of us that are in it, we wouldn't trade it for the world.
So I have this thing that I call the spirit of service. That is something special about our communities, and really the willingness and desire to give back to your community. I tell people all the time, listen, if you love to serve, politics may be for you, but it may not be for you. And it's definitely not easy if you go in thinking you're going to make everyone happy. Unfortunately, that will never, ever, ever happen. You need to go in and say, okay, if I can make 80 or 90% of the people happy, you're doing pretty darn good. And again, to Priya's point, I totally wholeheartedly agree. Definitely be yourself. I can tell you that, I know that my city's never had a mayor like me. I am the first woman, but I never have tried to change myself. I want to be as genuine as I always am, and when I have a conversation with someone, I need them to know that they're important to me. I tell people all the time, one of my favorite things, although this election might be a little bit different, but one of my favorite things is kind of like when you're out farming. You knock on the door, you have no idea who you're going to meet, but their perspective and their feedback is valuable to you. I tell people, I walk, and I used to say this when I was in new homes. Someone would be walking toward the door. I would go, oh, are they going to buy or are they not going to buy? That's the question. Are they going to be a tire kicker or a real solid lead? And I find that to be actually exciting. But the best part of it is you get to meet a lot of different people in this job, which is great. I feel like, but as long as you remember when you're knocking on those doors, when you're talking to other, people that you don't see every single day, they do have a valuable perspective. And it might not be something that you actually are going to hear from your little circle, because your circle is really small, much smaller than you think it is when you're in politics. And when you're out there listening to people, you've got to try to remember to bring their voice to the table, and I think that's probably the most important part of it. But if you want to go into politics, I would say definitely find a mentor and someone that you can talk to and just bounce things off of. I have them as on a daily basis now, even as serving. This is my 16th year, so I've been doing this for a while, and hopefully I'll get elected again this year. I am running in the fall for my second term as mayor. But if you are not taking those valuable tidbits of information from people that are outside of your circle, you're really losing out, because you won't do a very good job with your community. But again, find a mentor, find people that you look up to, and find your special way though. You don't have to change to be someone that you're not.
I would say whether you want to be involved or not, not even on a political level, but just in whatever industry you may be serving, just getting involved is really important, period. Whether or not you want to be in a leadership role, I guess it was obviously instilled in me as I was growing up, but the value you get out of it is just, there's no monetary value to that. The people that I've met along the way, the number of people who stepped into my world and offered help and mentored me along the way is just invaluable to me. And so there's so many times that I've stepped in roles and I get often told that I have a problem saying no. But also I don't like not being able to do something. And so if I feel like I can help in any way, I'm not the person that likes to be at the forefront. I don't. Anybody who knows me knows that I hate being up here speaking. And so, but I always want to help and feeling like I'm making a difference. And that's really important. And that's important to step in those roles. And there's so many times I step in rooms where I've been asked to take on a position. And I'm like, why do you want me? Like, what do I have? There's so many people in this room that are so much smarter than me or have more experience, or the people that I'm sitting at a board table with, and I'm just like, I'm surrounded by these incredible people. But they always say, right, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. And so just being surrounded by those people constantly made me grow as a human. And there's nothing that I can do to give back to the people that have given to me over time. And so just getting involved, like I said, is just really important because the things that you got and the relationships that you make out of it. So it's not always about being in leadership, it's just about being present and growing as a human.
Thank you. Thank you to the ladies. We're going to open it up for Q&A. I don't know if I can do this. Hello? Does anybody have any questions?
Can you talk about SB 9?
I guess I don't need a microphone.
I thought you'd never ask.
In my opinion, again, I talked a little bit about state overreach. There is an initiative that is out there floating around to get a ballot measure on this fall. It's called Our Neighborhood Voices. It's the Brand Wang Mendoza tripartisan initiative, and my city, I brought that forward. 3 of us, 3 out of the 5 council members did approve that to support this initiative. So what it is essentially is a change in the, because again, state overreach is too much. You know, depending on the actual lot, you can have up to 4 units, depending, it could be 4 units on one single family residential lot that's there today. This isn't for new housing, this is for existing housing. This changes everything in my opinion, because when you buy a single family residential house, you have an expectation. And that expectation is not that it's going to change drastically and you are going to have now a small apartment building next to you. Whether it be 3 units, whether it be 2 units, whether it be 4 units, it's a big deal. And I think it really will change our neighborhoods if it is utilized. And it doesn't guarantee that it will be affordable housing. And so I do have an issue with that. The other part that I really have an issue with is who thinks that a developer of a 4-unit building would not have to pay for school fees, for water fees, or any infrastructure extra. I have a real problem with that. Developers have to pay their own way. When you're not investing in a community due to SB 9 and pulling that state regulation in, I have a real problem with it. So again, there are petitions out there circulating. Please, please, even if you don't believe in it, let the voters decide. Do we want to change to the California Constitution? Because that's what that initiative will do. It will change the California Constitution to bring local government oversight back into the conversation and no longer having the state mandate, because really our communities need to stay special, in my opinion. And I, again, don't like any mandates. I like for us to have local control because I know what keeps San Marcos special, just as Priya knows what keeps Carlsbad special. We really know, and our communities really need a voice, and it's been taken away.
Any other questions?
Hi, I wanted to ask a question. I mean, we have leaders here, and it is your vision that leads the city, right? Whether we're talking about Carlsbad, whether we're talking about San Marcos, I don't care if that's the vision, right? But let's take Restaurant World, or let's take this hotel, right? We have people here that are serving us, washing dishes, serving the best. And we talk about the fact that they need a place to live, right? And affordability is an issue. So how do we address that if we're not looking at housing and, you know, SB 9, dense buildings, right? Filling up. Because, and I own a home in San Diego, and I love it, right? It's roomy, it's beautiful, but I worry about the housing, and I worry about my gardener, and I worry about my community, and I worry about all the kids in various schools, whether it's Carlsbad or Escondido, because we just don't have the housing that's needed for our population. So how do we address that without compromising the lifestyle that we have? I mean, I don't want to compromise it, but at the same time, I see the need. So how do you address housing in that particular matter? And looking at the right picture of everybody that keeps our community vibrant, right? Because without the dishwashers, without the servers, here, we get to serve ourselves. So what is that vision? What does it look like? And how do we get to it? It's complicated, I know. Thank you.
Sure. Happy to. So I appreciate the question, and actually something just recently over the last couple of weeks that the city of Carlsbad revisited was our inclusionary housing ordinance. I know that in 1993 we had passed our first, which was incorporating, making sure that when developers do build, that they do build 15% inclusionary housing. What we did to update that particular policy was, of course, when we get our regional housing needs assessment numbers, we're having to build very low income, moderate, above moderate. And many of our housing stock here in Carlsbad specifically tends to be in that above moderate income level, right? And so in order to hit that missing middle that I know we talked about earlier, ensure that we're also hitting our very low income and low income folks, what we did with regards to our policy was update that. So when folks are building that 15% inclusionary housing, they can take a mix of that moderate, low income and very low income, as long as it hits that 80% average median income, and ensure that we have kind of a diverse housing stock that they're providing when they're building multifamily units. And so instead of it all just being luxury condominiums, they're also making sure that they're providing for those moderate income, low income and very low income households. So we're doing what we can to try and figure out, what can we do to keep those folks that are serving our community, right? I think it's so important. We have a tourism industry here, so we have 4,500 hotel rooms, right? That means we have thousands of jobs that are folks that are serving within our community. And those folks may be commuting from 2 to 3 hours just to come serve folks in our community. And so definitely workforce housing is top of mind for me, making sure that we're thinking about where we can incorporate more housing for folks that are working here. I've been working with some of the folks that are developing in our community to ensure that they will be doing that. And then also making sure we have the proper infrastructure in place. So similar to what Mayor Jones had mentioned earlier, it's not just about the housing, it's ensuring that they have all of the amenities and transportation options and everything else available to them. So we're doing all that we can to ensure that, and it's a great question. I'm always thinking about it because I like I mentioned, it's not just about me. Yes, I need to purchase a home too in the next, hopefully 10 years, fingers crossed. But I think it's also about our future generations. So yeah, thanks.
Well, I do agree that it is an issue. In San Marcos, we have about 7% of our total housing stock as deed restricted affordable, more than most cities in the county. I think only the city of San Diego has more percentage-wise than our city. But we need to continue approving these projects, and we've done a very good job of it. However, what the state has done in their infinite wisdom, as I say that with the proper amount of sarcasm, is in 2012 they eliminated our affordable housing agencies, which was our redevelopment agencies. And that's how we were actually able to build all of that housing. In my tenure as a council member in the last, I guess it's almost 16 years, we have actually built over 500, almost 550 new affordable units in San Marcos. It's a lot of housing. And I have to tell you that there is more on the horizon. However, it's so difficult to actually build it. And we're in the midst right now of redeveloping a couple of different projects in San Marcos that were affordable housing to actually add some more units. Unfortunately, it's so competitive because what the state, again, in their infinite wisdom has done, they've made the tax credit, it's a little bit complicated, but the tax credit system is so difficult for these developers to actually get that money to actually help them subsidize that housing, because it does need to be subsidized. I may have mentioned it a little bit earlier, but there is a housing ladder, and that is all the way from affordable, and we also have on top of that, by the way, of the 2,300 total housing units that are deed restricted affordable in our city. We also have another 1,000 affordable units that are, they fall under the mobile home rental ordinance. So it's actually rent control on our mobile home parks. So about 1,000 more units on top of that. So truly we have about 3,300 affordable units in our community. But it's tough. It is really a tough one. Because if you don't have that housing ladder, though, with the low income, the moderate, which is the middle workforce housing, and then you go up to your luxury homes, which now, if you look around, almost everything is a luxury home, over $1 million. That is insane, because it's true. When you've got your, we have a lot of students in our city too. We have about 40,000 with all of our different higher learning institutions. It's a lot of young people. They're moving home with their families, saying, how am I going to be able to buy a house? It does not look good. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It is a tough thing. But we need to make decisions based on having some, and back to your point of the possibilities. I, for one, think that if you've got a single-family residential neighborhood, you shouldn't change that. However, there is going to be higher density other places. But we need people like you to help us champion that. Because the higher density is how we're going to be able to deliver that as cities. But again, we don't even actually build anything. We are trying to create the culture and the opportunities for development to actually happen. But if we don't have your support and out there having these conversations, it's not going to happen. And we're not going to be able to do it by ourselves. So truly, you know, when we say it takes a village, it truly does take a village. And people like you are actually going to help us in your careers, talking to your families, your retirees, and getting everyone behind this concept of home ownership and having a place to live is what we need. We don't need homeless on the streets. We don't need people living in their cars. We need to have opportunities. But it's not an easy conversation, but we've got to continue having the conversation. And we do need you to help us champion that.
Any other questions?
So I have a question about, what about apartment buildings? Do you, in both of your cities, are you seeing permits and are you seeing apartment buildings being built? Because certainly that's something that instantly is higher density, which if they can be smaller units, workforce units, they're much more affordable, and does that help you with any of the requirements of the state?
Well, let me jump in next. I wouldn't say that it necessarily helps you with your requirements by the state, but it can. And I remember the very first project that I ever approved, it was Palomar Station. I don't know if you're familiar with it. But it's right there off of Las Posas, right there next to the Sprinter tracks. So it's an excellent opportunity of TOD, which is transit-oriented development. That was a great opportunity for us. I'm not kidding. You should have seen the outcry. I sat there up on the dais going, what have I done to myself? That meeting went until 1 o'clock in the morning. It was people saying, you're destroying our community, you're doing this, you're doing that. I have to tell you, apartments are an excellent way. I lived in an apartment almost my entire teenage years. It is a way for people to get into a home at some point in time, but it's not going to solve all the problems. What will solve all the problems is an approach with everything. Everything with rentals, with people living with their multi-generational families living together, but also having the opportunities of that housing ladder. It's going to need to be affordable also, and I think one of the things, and I tell people this all the time, the legislature has got to get off of their seats and start taking action on bringing back redevelopment agencies so that we can actually build the affordable housing that is mandated to us. And without that, we're never going to be able to find a safe place for people to call home. Not everyone anyway.
And I'll just briefly say we are definitely seeing many areas that are starting to have some apartment buildings going up. So Aviara and Palomar Airport Road, there's going to be some housing that's going to be built there. And then we do have in the works with the housing element update a few other spaces that folks are looking at with regards to potentially incorporating some more apartments.
Helps a lot.
Why not take existing buildings that are out there now that has no one in there, like the malls, for instance, and make apartments out of them inside?
That sounds easy, but you don't have the infrastructure in it. I mean, if you think about the amount of windows in the walls and the plumbing that's not really there, it's actually a bit more difficult. It's been discussed, but that's
Well, I think that's an interesting concept. So right after COVID started, and you started to see downtown all of the office buildings. We don't have a ton of office buildings in San Marcos that are sitting there vacant. But I actually reached out to my friend at Dempsey Construction. I said, okay, if this is a good idea, it's mine. If it's a bad idea, I don't want to have any part of it. But what I said was, how about development companies, construction companies, come up with ideas of how you convert some of these high-rise office buildings into housing on the upper levels and then still remain having some, office space. So I know that there is discussion about it. I don't know how far it's gone, but I can tell you it's a good idea. You've already got parking for it. Not everyone's going to own a car, but many will. But having those opportunities is definitely a good way. And why not live where you work, right? Why not say, oh, I could just go down, 10 stories and there I am. I mean, those are ways that we are going to solve the crisis. And I did talk about it a little bit earlier. It's going to be a little bit of everything. And ideas like that are definitely one of the ways I think that we can actually achieve what we need to achieve. Because I don't know if you all know this, but between now and 2029, the county, that means all the cities plus the county, are supposed to deliver almost 172,000 housing units. Now that could be apartments, that could be houses, but it's going to be an array of housing options. It's not going to be one, it's going to be all.
And actually here in Carlsbad, we are looking at some of those options specifically. So around, right by the shops at Carlsbad, that particular property is owned by the city, by a bit is Oceanside, a bit is the transit district. And so we've been having conversations trying to figure out what can we do to make that turn into kind of a live, work, play area. And so stay tuned, I would say, to see what we are going to be doing. But we have been looking at, looking at opportunities with industrial commercial areas and figuring out where we can incorporate some housing there as well.
Well, even strip malls, strip malls, every mall, every office or space has a bathroom already, so you have infrastructure there already. So why can't they use that and make your condos or townhomes?
Yeah, that's like Lisa mentioned, I think it's definitely something that we are looking at and trying to figure out how we can incorporate some of that already existing infrastructure. But I think we're trying very hard to figure out a lot of more innovative solutions in terms of, utilizing what's already existing, so, yeah.
Well, and real quick, I want to say one thing. So in San Marcos, since I've been on the council, one of the things whenever we've built mixed use, and it's got ground floor retail, but there's also housing incorporated, I have been very intentional, and we have done it in many instances where we have converted, and I'm like, okay, let's just make sure we can do this at a later date. Having those opportunities to convert some of that retail to residential. And like I said, we have done it at Palomar Station, we've done it at Creekside Marketplace, Creekside Drive in the affordable housing there as well. So it's actually a win-win for us, but having that flexibility is definitely important, and we're going to continue making sure that happens in the future as well.
Go ahead.
I'm used to being called on. super obedient. I just wanted to thank you guys. I don't really have a question. Thanks for being women in leadership, and I feel like I'm represented being here. Especially Priya, I tune into city council meetings, and every time you say your quick bit, in front of all of these definitely older people, mostly male, I'm like, yeah. And I'm determined to stay in Carlsbad. I've lived here for 10 years now, and I rent. We owned a home before I got divorced, and now I've been renting for 4 years. And it's tough, at median home price, $800,000. You're saying your income has to be 145. When you're self-employed, you have to be like, 100 more than that for 2 straight years. And no aberrations, So I'm just going along, determined to stay here and do my part. But I really feel just so represented having you on our city council and seeing you there in the meetings. It means a lot to everyone, especially women of all walks of life. Thank you.
Thank you, that just made my day.
So, if you've been here, we say it before, I'm gonna say it again, I'm gonna hammer it into you today. Get involved. Again, it's so important. It's not about being in a leadership role or anything. It's just about being involved in that you can do what you can to help change the situation. And we at NSDCR have an amazing government affairs director who stepped into some big shoes, and I've watched, I chaired the local government affairs committee while he was in his first 2 years, and he took charge of that role, and he has built some incredible relationships that we have people like this that come and give us time, they meet with us, they hear us, but it's also about being there at their city council meetings and helping them too, because the only people that show up when these housing topics come up are the people that don't want it. And they equally need people in there to talk, for any policies that they're trying to do to create housing. And also, just like Rebecca said, you guys cross paths with so many people every day. Have those conversations. When you start giving them statistics and they understand that it's not just a San Diego or a California issue, this is a national issue, and then now watching all the people that are crossing our border at the same time, it's just gonna get worse. Having those conversations are so imperative. So please just, be out there and be an advocate for it.
I have one more question. You were talking about in about 2 years or so, 20% of realtors won't be here. Why is that?
Well, it could be a number of things. Every time the market goes like this, we tend to lose membership. But honestly, our industry is just being challenged left and right. And there's some major lawsuits out there that NAR are involved in, and they're really challenging buyer brokers and the commission structures and how we're being paid. And so, if you really think about it, 80% of the business is done by 20% of the membership anyhow, and you have a lot of fly-by-night agents that are out there, not maybe giving us the best name. You're going to start weeding out the people that aren't producing on top of it, but then those people that just can't survive on, if they start slimming the margins even more. They see a page, they see a big check coming out, but they don't understand all the marketing, all the work, and everything else that's gone into that, and how much money goes actually out the door that you actually take home. And so it's just really important, like I said, to understand what's going on in the industry right now and helping, being involved with your associations and everything, and giving back to, having the conversations with your clients, to understanding what realtors do, not just in facilitating business with them, but as our association, finding together and working with the city council members and working on a state, local, and national level to help protect their private property rights, and just understanding that there's nobody else out there doing that for them. And when you start having those conversations with people, it's kind of interesting to see their eyes light up, and they're just like, wow, I had no idea. I'm like, yeah, when we go away, you think Zillow's gonna protect you? No, they don't care. So they're gonna buy their house from you, and then they're gonna make a profit on it. So I'm not to ham on Zillow. There's many of them out there, but it's just important to have those conversations so people understand really what we're doing on the backside.
Another question, go ahead.
Hi. First of all, yes, thank you, ladies. This has been a phenomenal event. Very informative. So I actually do acquisitions for one of the biggest, I guess you can call them flippers here in San Diego. And I would say we are providing a lot of the inventory in San Diego. We're flipping over 200 properties a year. And so there's a new proposition going around. 1771, AB 1771. So I just wanted to know, your intake on that.
So that's the one where they're trying to do 25%, right, on the tax, yeah. So this is something to, when you're involved, when you're paying attention, you see these things coming, so you can help fight it up front. And while in theory, personally, I can't speak for everybody on this panel, or I can't speak for people in this room, but personally, people are having a hard time entering the housing market as it is right now, right? And so you have a lot of first-time home buyers that, you know, our associations work with local city councils too, and trying to get first-time home buyer, you know, credits and help funding them for down payments and such. And so they hardly have the money to come in for the down payment on a really expensive home here, let alone being able to remodel or rehab. And they're getting these 1970s, 80s homes. Some of them don't even have kitchens, you know? So the people that are flipping homes, I don't think what they understand is these people are not competing in our marketplace. They're getting off-market property homes. They're getting deeply discounted homes. And they're taking homes that nobody else, you know, not many people have the money to invest on top of purchasing the home. And so I think, I don't agree with the policy. I think you're gonna take away from a lot of people in that industry that are bringing remodeled homes to market and helping those first-time home buyers or people just, you know, general people. But I think there are a lot of properties that are out there that don't, you know, a lender wouldn't even loan on. And right? And so if you don't have people who are in there, I mean, yes, they're making a profit, but they're also taking a chance. They don't know when the market's going to change, and there's a lot of those flippers out there that lose their butts when the market takes a turn. And so they need the margin as well, and you know, there's a lot of work that goes into it. So I don't know if I agree with that 25% tax personally, but it is something to watch and help fight. Marie, she's one of our state directors, by the way, so she's heavily involved too.
1771 is still in committee, and actually, saying it's a flipper, it's not just flipper, it's everybody across the board.
Yeah.
They had it at 7 years and they brought it down to 3 years, but it would be everybody. If you don't own your home for 3 years, you're gonna give the state 25% of the profit.
Yeah, so for
I didn't see them hammering any nails with you, did you? So it's still in committee. CAR is fighting it strong.
Yeah, so for the 7-year, 3-year thing, what the policy says is that anybody who comes and invests in a property and tries to turn it for a profit has to pay 25% tax to the state unless they hold the property for 3 years. And so now you're just going to turn a lot of properties into investment property for renters, which you do need renter housing too, but you're taking again more supply off for people to be able to build their generational wealth.
It's a terrible bill.
It's terrible.
Go ahead.
I have just a quick thing. I'm against mandates. So this is another mandate, and you know, whether you're making money off of a home or you're making money at a regular brick and mortar job, in my opinion, it's irrelevant. People do deserve an opportunity. I think that will take away an opportunity. What if you get divorced? What if you have a job change for you or your spouse, where you've got to leave the county and you've got to move out of the area? I think this is completely unfair. It's just like when, you know, I mean, a lot of situations, I don't agree with it. Again, back to any mandate, really, I think government is best when it is staying in its own space and not getting into everyone's.
So first of all, thank you for everything that you do and for your presentation today. It's very inspiring. I do have an idea, so if it's a great idea, I'll take credit. If it's not a great idea, somebody texted it to me, okay? So the idea is that we want to build affordable housing. I think that's overall the general consensus. But the problem is that it's so expensive to build, and material costs and labor, it has to make sense to the developer as well. So why don't, on the same footprint of a 2,600 square foot home, which is like 4 or 5 bedroom house with 3 beds, selling for 1.2, why not on the same footprint build 2 units that are 1,300 square feet, 2 bed, 2 bath, and instead of having to be 800,000 plus, having to be 500,000 or 400,000, so that way you have 2 families living in the same footprint, but still they can qualify. You know, I think that for $450,000, you have the majority of the people, including the people that service the city, be able to afford and live in the same city. And the developer is able to make money, and you don't take up that much more space.
So are you talking about new zoning for new product, or are you talking about existing?
New zoning for new product.
Yeah.
Instead of building a 5-bedroom house for for $1 million, build 2 in the same size and sell them for $500,000.
Well, I'm gonna let you in on a little secret. So back in 2016, when I was up for my last election as council member, we had a development that was mixed use Fore that was going for a rezone. I have to tell you, I knew, because a lot of people said, so we're going to, if you approve this, you are going to change, we want to get you unelected. I had people saying that to me, threatening me. And I said, you know what? The fact that it was going to be workforce housing, in my opinion, starting out at right around $400,000, I was willing to take that chance because I knew it was the right thing to do. You do have to have a certain amount at this job. You have to have a certain amount of courage when you believe that you are doing something for the right reasons and trying to, create those available, that housing ladder that I spoke about a little bit earlier, which you all know about. I think you do need to do that. I'm okay with doing that on occasion. I think developers, the people that are actually own these properties that are saying, hey, I want to develop this property at some point in time, they're the ones that need to make these decisions because everything is market driven. And as long as they're able to make those higher dollar, home sales, they're probably going to do it because it does cost a little bit more when they're building at a smaller scale. Because if you've got 2 single family residential units, whether they're attached or not, you now have 2 kitchens, you have multiple of the more expensive items. But really, I think it's going to be market driven, and I think at some point in time, it is going to be more of that. And as I mentioned a little bit earlier in North City, about them going a little bit higher, they're not going to increase the density, but they are going to increase the height. Again, creating that outdoor activated space that I think is so important to us for our quality of life. But market is going to dictate a lot of that. And I'm actually willing to do it, and I have done it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would say that, for us here, as we're going through our growth management plan update and our general plan update, if there is a demand from the community for it, I think there's definitely potential, especially with new properties, ensuring that we are able to build something that would actually fit the demand. So definitely, I think it is a possibility. I think it's just up to the community to let us know that that's something that they want.
Great. Thank you so much, because what I've been noticing is that other parts of our industry are stepping in and doing some other creative things. There's lenders that will pair 2 families together and have them both qualify to live in one house and share a house, which I think is kind of crazy. You're going to have a lot of calls in, not just domestic disputes, but like different families, like living together. I think that's weirder than just having them separate. So we do need a solution. I think this route's better than bringing unrelated people living in the same house, qualified to buy a house pretty much.
I have another question over here.
Oh, I have a question about, I don't know if this is even been brought up, but it just crossed my mind. What about building things, units that are small, like studios for individuals that don't have a family, and that's all the space they need? I don't know, 200-300 square feet, maybe that's too small, but something that would, like a single person. Is that something that anyone's thinking of building to accommodate those type of people?
Yes, yeah, there are developers that are looking at that as they're starting to think about whether it's workforce housing or whatever else. They are definitely incorporating smaller units because they do see that opportunity. So we'll be seeing that, I think, if not this year, in the next couple of years, at least in Carlsbad. Yeah.
That mixed use Fore that I was talking about earlier, it was in Rancho Tesoro, and actually there were units under 1,000 square feet that were opportunities. I can't remember the exact square footage. I want to say it was right around 600 square feet, and there were studios, and then there are also 1 bedrooms. And those are opportunities for sure that will be coming forward, because it's true. Who in this room, including myself, goes home and they pretty much use just their bedroom, their kitchen, and their family room? I don't even personally like a living room, but those 3 rooms in my house, oh, and of course the bathroom, those 3 areas in my house get the most use. So when you look at what we need and our opportunities, those are definitely going to be some of them moving forward for sure.
I can just say that I think with the big push, I'm sorry.
Come on, I can just lean in and all over you.
I would say the big push with the ADUs helps cover some of that, and all the the cities that are really pushing to implement and let people fast track putting ADUs on their property really help cover ground on those smaller studio and 1-bedroom units.
What about a tiny house village?
I'm open for anything. I definitely don't want people to live on. I don't want people living in the streets, and I certainly don't want people living in their cars either. I want them to have a good, safe place to actually, with the door and everything, so they can live a good, safe existence, for sure.
Any more questions? Well, thank you all for coming. Thank you for my special guests that came. Thank you to the panel. Thank you, Taylor Thompson. You're awesome. And you all have a good rest of your day. Thank you.